Hey everyone, welcome back into the Leaning into Leadership podcast. This is episode 211, and I am Darrin Peppard, leadership coach, speaker, and author, and I'm excited to bring to you another powerful conversation that will challenge your thinking and strengthen your leadership. Now, let me ask you a question. What are you doing to retain the incredible educators that are on your team? If the answer includes staff lunches and the occasional spirit day, it might be time to dig a little deeper. In today's episode, I sit down with my longtime friend, Nate Eklund, the founder of Vital Network, to talk about how we reimagine schools, not just as places of learning, but as workplaces where adults can thrive as well. And Nate has spent decades studying educator satisfaction, burnout, and retention, and he's got a message that every school and district leader needs to hear. Now, this conversation goes way beyond self-care. And we're going to talk about real systems change, why burnout is about the workplace and not just about the person, and what you can do to lead more sustainably for yourself and for your staff. Trust me, you're going to walk away from this one with fresh insight and a few mic drop moments. And hey, if this episode hits home for you and you're thinking, we need help building stronger leadership teams, or maybe you just want to bring some energy and purpose to your opening day convocation, hey, I'd love to connect with you. Whether it's through coaching, through workshops, or a keynote that sets the tone for your school year, I am here to help you and your team lead with clarity and impact. And you can reach me anytime at roadtoawesome.net or send me a message on your favorite platform. Now, let's jump into this conversation with my buddy, Nate Eklund. All right, my friends, welcome back into the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Today on the show, my guest is Nate Eklund of the Vital Network. And actually, Nate and I go back a ways. And what I'm most interested in with this conversation, I know there's going to be so many great pieces, is really that conversation around educator burnout, but much more at the systems level than it is around just self-care. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that a big part of why I do what I do is I want to see leaders stay in the game. I want to see leaders be successful. I want to see leaders really walk in their purpose. And so when Nate and I sat down and had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about his work with the Vital Network, and knowing Nate, like I said, for a number of years, it didn't surprise me that he had moved in this direction. But wow, folks, you are in for a big treat with today's conversation. So Nate, thanks so much for joining me here on Leaning into Leadership.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, Darrin.
Right on. So Nate, let's do this real quick, just to give folks a little bit of a baseline of who you are and kind of I don't know, maybe a snapshot of your journey.
Yeah.
Let's have you zoom out a little bit and just give people a little taste of who Nate Eklund is.
Yeah. Well, that's existential though, Darrin, isn't it? So, yeah,
That's what we get the big bucks, my friend.
That's right. I have I've spent my whole career in education, much like you, right? And so I'm. And you're like a billion of living on an academic calendar. But I started my career as a high school English teacher here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Taught for a little over a decade. And at that point, I think school administrator was probably, like for most of us, was next. I'd kind of maxed out any and everything I could do, in the building. I was department chair and on the superintendent hiring committee, all the things. And I loved it. I liked the experience of having like impact, and kind of thinking at scale. But I didn't burn out. I loved teaching up until the last day. I sobbed when I closed up room 213. It was terrible. But I had a really great administrator suggest that maybe administration wasn't the only option, and that I should explore a little bit of what else I could do. So I ended up getting a 2-year research grant that I was able to use to look at workplace conditions and burnout in education. So for 2 years, I just had this luxurious time where I could just read and write and think and ponder. The result of that was not a PhD or an EDD, but I did write this lovely book, How Was Your Day at School? Improving Dialogue About Teacher Job Satisfaction. So all of a sudden I started really my whole career started to transition to thinking about schools as workplaces, and how we really build these robust cultures and connections at schools. There was a brief period there of book signings and speaking, and I loved that, but I also knew that it wasn't quite the right fit for me, because I thought the work that needed to happen at schools was going to take time, it was going to take attention and real rigor. So my that part of my career actually transitioned then into having a 10-year consultancy, working with school districts across the country, really looking at workplace environment in education. And after 10 years of that, I thought, okay, wait, the things that we're doing are working. We are affecting educators' lives. We are making places better, but it's not scalable. And the profession writ large could use a little love. Vital Network then is really an extension then of that 25-year story, right? Of just sort of obsession around looking at the working environments of adults in schools. And so Vital is a newish venture, where we're using good technology, good advisors, good counsel, good data, good research to really think about how it is that we can promote the whole profession, and not just work for a district. So I don't know, that's about as succinctly as I can tell my story from graduating from college in 1995 to today, but that's sort of it.
Yeah, that's all good. That's good. There's so much in there, and man, I'm trying to decide where I want to go first with this. There's just so much there to dive into. I certainly want to get to the the burnout piece specifically, and one of the words that you use in there, and I think this is where I want to go. You talked about workplace environment, and I don't think we very often think about that when we talk about a school. We will talk about school culture, and certainly workplace environment is a piece of that. We might talk about caseloads, we might talk about class size, but workplace environment is a much more encompassing phrase. So given the amount of time, the effort, the research that you have done there, give us Nate Eklund's the expert in this space. Give us a good definition of workplace environment as it pertains to a school.
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably could go a lot of directions. I think there's some really foundational pieces to your question and my answer, and I'll just maybe kind of touch on them, and we can go deeper on them. But first of all, I think is well, let's start with the environment question. When we think about burnout, and this is not unique to education, this is just sort of, I think, the role that work plays in our lives as humans. But when we think about burnout, we typically see it through the lens of the individual. And when we do that, then we also apply sort of logically individual responses to burnout. It's a really well-researched topic, burnout. I mean, it has traits: diminished personal accomplishment, emotional exhaustion, depersonalization. So, I mean, it's a thing that we know what it is. But generally, we look at it and we say, well, then you should get more sleep. You should get more exercise. You should not binge watch Netflix. There are all these things, right? And so the individual experiencing that gradient of burnout at any point in a week or a day or a career is generally left to think, well, this is my problem and I got to solve it. In the environments where we do recognize that maybe burnout is happening to people, and we still think it's an individual thing, then we might do a bunch of interventions that would treat it thusly, right? So we'd have a staff barbecue. We would tell people to, turn your computers off at 4 and go home or whatever. I mean, we do a number of gestures that are kind, empathetic, and logical, but it still says at the end of the day, like, you are burning out, so you need to go do something about it. Our perspective is really that burnout is a sort of a depleted condition that is caused by external factors that no amount of self-care could overcome. So, you think like if I'm a fifth grade teacher and I've gotten 6 reading curriculums in 4 years that no one asked me about, I don't need more kale, right? Like I don't I don't need to do yoga. You need to ask me for my input. I'm an expert. So so I think when we and then when we think about culture too, and we wrap that as another layer into your question, we really look at school culture as though it's sort of monolithic, like it's a big thing, encompassing students, families, staff, the broader community. It's this one big thing. Well, even the word staff culture isn't particularly like dialed in enough, right? Because like at a high school, the science department might be rocking it and the math department might be strangling each other. So like so when we think about culture, we also can't say we're going to build a positive school culture and then just kind of wrap it up. It takes really some granularity, some rigor, and really like thoughtful, strategic investment in looking at the environment. So we are not, Vital, I would not say is like, for example, a well-being company. I wouldn't be like, we don't lead workshops around resiliency training or breathing or stress reduction. But we would say, well, if you have really well-run meetings or your time is really well allocated or you have a voice in decision making, those kinds of things, like that's culture. Culture is management. And so, I've said for 20 years, nothing improves morale more than a well-run school, right? You better hire a pretty awesome juggler if you think that's going to like solve the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're so spot on right there. And you're taking my mind down a whole bunch of different roads right there. And I guess I'm kind of curious too. So let's maybe stay on that staff culture piece.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, but actually I was mowing the lawn earlier today, listening to a podcast, and that on that particular podcast, the individual was talking about how we speak with instead of speaking at people in order to be effective as a leader. And he made mention, I wish he would have gone further, so I'm gonna hope that maybe you can take some of this and run with it.
Sure.
I'm curious when we think about this all-encompassing culture piece. We're at a time now where maybe one of the first times we have 4, even 5 generations of adults working in the same building. You have 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds working in a building with people who are in their 60s. And there's a tremendous difference between my daughter's generation and my parents' generation. So what role does that play in some of the pieces you're talking about? I mean, because let's be honest, the 22-year-old, the 23-year-old, the 24-year-old, they look at the world a little bit different. They expect things different at work than the person who, started at the same place 30 years ago, and I'm going to stay in one location. So I hope I've done enough to set up this question. I'm curious about the multiple generations and the impact they have on burnout culture, the whole bit.
I think there's a lot wrapped up in that question, and I think there's a lot of ways you could go with it. I mean, a couple of things stand out, though. Excuse me, as we think about, really the role in some ways turnover and attrition and longevity play in culture, and I think some of that is around what kind of the unwritten rules of employment, right? I was 22 when I started teaching. I remember probably in my second week, it was still August, still warm out. I wore a pair of Birkenstocks into my classroom, no socks. And Don Wayne, the teacher next to me, he taught there probably 30 years at that point, came over and he always had mints in his pocket. So during passing time, he stood next to me as I'm out there in the hallway, and he holds the mints out. I grab one. He says, are those the shoes you're wearing today, Nate? And I said, today, needless to say, I did not wear open-toed Birkenstocks anymore that year. So part of it's like the unwritten. There's nowhere in the handbook that said that, but
Right.
he held me to a certain expectation, and I appreciate it. That was fine. It was good. So I think part of when we think about like high turnover rates in K-12 education right now, and really short tenures, right? People leaving in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, we think of that from a workforce issue. We think of it as a just I got to get my school staffed issue. I just got to open my building every day, and that's obviously mission critical. But what also erodes over time, though, is that sense of continuity over time. And I would say one of the cool things I've noted in education, and maybe I'm being a little bit Pollyanna here, but I feel like the younger generation of teachers who are coming in our experience, are being listened to better. You know, like in our data, we disaggregate by years of service. And what's fascinating in that, like you could say, oh, we have a professional development problem, for example. Well, if you actually look, the teachers in the first 5 years maybe love their PD, and it's the mid-year career teachers who don't. And so I think we can really identify with sort of good intuition, good analogs, good ideas of analytics, even of looking at like how the variety of experiences people are having inside of our buildings. But you know, I think the high turnover rates sadden me too, because we like these people we work with, right? I'm just bummed. I'm bummed that people are leaving. I have been here 20 years. And I have been part of this young adult's early career. And I'm bummed to see him go. And so I think, you know, when we think about turnover and retention, I don't really put retention in the model like you're going to be here for 30 years. I think generationally, I think it's just it's just not true. So I think of it more about like sustainability and longevity. Like if we can get people who are going to quit at year 3, stay till year 7, or you quit at year 5, stay till year 10, not only is their craft improving, their connection with students improving, but they're also becoming part of our, you know, part of our community and our culture. And so I think the ROI on that is like, there's lots of different roads that you can go on that.
You know, you had said something earlier, and I read this. I think it might have been in our earlier conversation, but it might have been something that I read in your bio. But you had talked about, and this is kind of where I want to go next, the work of the Vital Network being not necessarily about just self-care, and not just about, you know, like you mentioned, having a barbecue. You know, you talked about it as, you know, earlier here in the podcast, you talked about it as not being back on you, the individual. And you've talked about, and I've heard you say that it's something that needs to be done at a systems level. And I know that's the work of the Vital Network. And so I want to kind of dig into that a little bit. I know primarily you work with states, so it's not like you're saying, hey, I want to work with such and such school. You are more at a larger systemic level. Like, let's get to the higher levels so we can make that systemic change. Let's talk a little bit about the work of the Vital Network and what you see in terms of that need for developing systems that reduce and prevent that educator burnout.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because, you know, the question starts with the shifting from the individual to the system. And then we actually matriculate it further and say, well, when we talk about the system, it might not just be Johnson Elementary School. They exist within a district. The district exists within a community. The community is within a state. And so, you know, sort of the nesting dolls, I think, of influence. I just want to make it clear, too, that, you know, you should get plenty of sleep. You should eat your vegetables and exercise. I mean, I think so. We're not. I think the at the end of the day, the outcome of the work needs to be increasing the statistical likelihood that the best version of yourself shows up more days than not. Right? There's grumpy Mr. Eklund, and there's like fired up Mr. Eklund. And I know who I want my kids learning from, and I know who my colleagues want to be around. And so I am responsible. Like I have to I have to choose apples, not apple fritters sometimes. I need to choose, like, so
Yeah.
that's on me. And then I think there's, if you think about the systems level work, then there's long field vision work too. There's career development, career pathways. There's salary and benefits. I mean, there's a whole lot of around that. And I think what schools sometimes miss, and what we try to add to the sort of the equation of thinking about retention and recruitment, is to stop and look down at kind of right where you are. And so, for example, like if you, Darrin, give me a job offer at your district, and I can make $5,000 more at one district over, let's say, I don't know, so I have two job offers. My question is going to go back to you. What are you going to do to retain me? What, like, if I sign with you, like, we should have like like the high school kids putting on which hat they're. I'm coming to
Right, yeah.
so I'm coming to your district. But when you do, what are you going to do to retain me? And I want a really good answer. I don't want you to tell me about student test scores. I don't really want to hear about one-to-one technology. You can entice me with a bunch of stuff. What I want to know is, like, what's my daily experience going to be working here, and can you prove it? Can you show me, like, the conditions into which I'm walking? Because I'm going to spend more of my waking hours with you and my colleagues than I am with my own people. So like my wife's going to get whatever's left of me at the end of the day. And so I think the work of Vital works both at the building level and then at the district level, and then increasingly regional and state levels, to answer that question. What are you going to do to retain me? And the answers need to include things like, where's my voice in decision making? How are time and resources allocated? What investments do you make organizationally into my well-being, relationships, and connections with others? So I want to hear, like, a great places to work pitch. Like, I want to hear my employment pitch. And then I want to go home with my wife, and I want to put the job offers on the table. And I want to sit there and say, well, even, let's say I could make even a guess that I might even take a job that pays me slightly less, right? Because I have proof points and confidence that my employment is going to be joyful. And so our work at Vital really works with school leaders, teacher leadership teams, and district leadership teams to identify those areas of need, identify those areas of growth and celebration, promote the great behaviors or systems that are existing over here and apply them over here where maybe it's not working. There's also a learning network, and really provide confidence that, that you should come work here, and you should tell your friends to come work here. And it's the tell the friends part is why we don't like thinking of this work only as helping a district or a school, because we think all ships need to rise at this point. The teacher retention and recruitment crisis is real. Right? I mean, how many superintendents do you talk to, Darrin, who are really struggling to stay fully staffed?
Almost everyone. Almost everyone. Yeah.
So we need to keep the teachers we have, promote and develop with them, but we also need to be able to go out to the marketplace and say, we are a great place to work, come on over. And, like, how is it that we tell that story?
I think that's fantastic. And it's not a perspective that most leaders will take. They are going to talk about, hey, here are the results that we get. Yes, we'll talk about, what number is going to go in the box on your paycheck, right? I mean, we do want to know those things. That's important. I want to know what my benefits are going to be. I want to know, about my health insurance. And I think this actually gets to that generational question too. I mean, what my health insurance and what my retirement looks like for somebody who's in their 40s or 50s is a whole lot more important to somebody who's in their 20s.
Yeah. Yep.
Many, many, many times I've sat, at the table doing, that offer of employment, and the 22-year-old almost never did they care about what their health insurance is. Like, okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have insurance. I'm going to get that everywhere. That doesn't concern me. But you talked about time allocation. You talked about, is my voice going to be heard? That's something that I think has certainly been a shift, certainly post-pandemic, but I think it was before that, where our employees, our classroom teachers, even go beyond that. I work with a bunch of different districts right now, and the work that they want me to do, three or four of my clients right now, their primary ask of me is to help grow leaders in non-labeled leader positions,
Mm.
teacher, paraprofessional,
Mm-hmm.
bus driver, you know, classified staff. I'm seeing more and more that people do want to invest in their folks. I know, and I'm going somewhere with this, trust me. May not feel like I'm going somewhere here, but I am going somewhere here. I know you've been working with a couple of states in particular, and I won't name them. If you choose to, that's fine. Um, what are some of the pieces that you're seeing, or some of the actions maybe that schools and districts in those states are taking as a result of the work of Vital Network?
Yeah. We're our I'll, I'll tip my cap to the state of North Dakota, where we are currently doing statewide efforts. And what's really fascinating about that is, well, first of all, it's always an opt-in proposition. So we're not like a state mandate or something. It is to garner the trust of leaders and to do high quality work. And I think that's just critical. And but the work is at the core of your question. And I think what I appreciate about sort of the statewide approach is that we're working with the Department of Instruction to share our data with theirs and really look at it as a whole system, looking at the role of higher ed. And so it is school by school, district by district growth. But can we actually extrapolate from the high quality work at a local level to think about how we operate at more large scale? And so it's everything from direct coaching, consulting, and advising with our partner districts, but it's also then able to take all of that learning and really think about, okay, well, how do we approach recruiting and retaining our young people into the profession, and then keeping them while they are here for as long as we possibly can, and as joyfully as we possibly can. So, for our work, oftentimes can be very rootsy. And very earthy, and I'm proud of that. And so we think about a leader, a principal, who used to drive to school dreading her faculty meetings because either she wasn't comfortable leading them or she knew everyone hated them. And so the third Tuesday of every month, which is something that she wasn't looking forward to, right? Can we bring that person into concert with her teacher leadership team to lead a redesign or rethinking of that? Can we actually look at it as a design and creative opportunity, not a problem even? Just can we? You don't like it, I don't like it. I don't feel good, you don't feel good. Can we just be honest about this and work through it? And October's meeting was maybe unsatisfying, and November's meeting is satisfying. Now, I'm not suggesting that reconfiguring a faculty meeting is going to solve your problems. But what it does do is it activates everyone within the system to not be a complainer, but to be a problem solver. And can we just be honest about it? Can we ground into it? And so I think, for me, I'm now thinking, okay, well, that principal, when she gets up in the morning and has her coffee and says goodbye, to her family, is feeling better about herself, holding the steering wheel slightly less tight, goes out of the building more present, available, and more herself than she was even there. So I never want to think that there's a level of abstraction too small when it comes to rethinking how it is that we operate. The same, I think, sort of ethos applies to rethinking big things too, PD and curricula and teaching and learning. Those are complex, but issues. Those are lots of stakeholders involved, lots of state mandates, federal mandates. They're big chunky things, but it doesn't mean we can't approach them with the same kind of how might we attitude. Okay, here's the thing: how might we think about this differently together? And I think that is really important. And then to your the source of the question, that means we can also then think about how we legislate. I was speaking of North Dakota. We were there. I was working with a bunch of people on the Senate, and a senator asked a question. If satisfaction and retention are so local, I'm not sure we should be passing like sort of curriculum laws here at the Capitol. I just said, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be.
There you go.
Thanks for. You said it, not me, man. And so I think it's this idea of really activating and equipping people to be sort of engaged in their day-to-day life and the ways that they operate. It's just really important. And so that to me is really important. Now, I will also say to something that's really important is that we're really turning a lot of our attention to the working experience of the leaders themselves. Because as you know, right, I mean, we say, nothing's more important to school culture and teacher success than the leader. And the leader reports up, reports down, and operates too often in sort of isolation. They're in this very lonely little space. How do we turn some attention to like what is the work environment of an administrator? What are those key intersections that matter in the lives, joy, and growth of our educational leaders? Because the turnover rate and churn of administrators is outpacing that of our educators. I mean, we're having so many administrators leaving in the first, kind of 3 to 5 years of their careers, long before they have a chance to really grow in that craft. And so I really think we have a serious conversation ahead, and it's really exciting for us to be working with our partner districts to say, what are the sort of the employment conditions of our leaders? How is their voice used in district decision making? How is their time allocated? And that's, I think, the tipping point of a really powerful spear, and we're turning a lot of energy towards that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit on something right there that, man, leaders, if you take anything away from this conversation, and honestly, you should take a lot away from this conversation, but this to me should be the most important takeaway. One, Nate, you're spot on. Being in a leadership role, especially being a campus leader, can be very isolating.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose to, it can be something where you dread having to make decisions, where you dread leading meetings. But when it's done right, when we really open up those channels of communication, when we stop thinking as the leader that we have to do it all, and we start listening to those around us. I love your example of the faculty meeting. I mean, I really do, because I know there are so many. I guarantee there are a bunch of leaders right now who, when they heard that, they're like, "Yeah, I'm driving to mine right now, and I don't want to go."
Yeah.
And you know what? My staff doesn't want to be there either.
Yeah.
But then we do one of two things. We either quit having those meetings, and then what do we hear? Well, there's no communication.
Mm-hmm.
Or we just keep doing them,
Yeah.
and everybody continues to be miserable.
Yeah.
The big takeaway for what you said there, I think it's one of the most overlooked skills for leaders, and those leaders who in those first 2 to 3 years, when you said before they can really figure it out, this is the skill that they probably don't figure out until about year 2 or year 3. Listening is the most important skill for leaders, and when you do that, I think it just encompasses so much of what you've talked about on this episode. From when is my voice heard as the classroom teacher?
Yeah.
To how do I collectively solve problems as a school leader? And on and on and on, right? All the way to your legislative example. I think that's just such a powerful takeaway, that one of the most important things we can do to improve the employee experience is we got to listen.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
What is the antecedent to good listening? Good questions,
Good
right?
questioning,
And so
yeah.
I think we have I want to make T-shirts or like the rubber bracelets or something, and I'm not totally kidding, but it'd be like IDK WDYT. I don't know. What do you think? And I want to. We literally sometimes rehearse this with our school leaders. Like, say it out loud. Just like get get cozy. I don't know. What do you think? And then that activates the aforementioned listening, right? And so I think part of it is a math problem, Darrin, or a math reframing. You know, if I'm a principal of a school and I have let's say 50 staff and 400, 800 kids or whatever. If I get in the car every day, my lens on my role is that I'm going to serve those 800 kids and their families. And in any way I do an end around my teaching staff, I've kind of adopted some broken algebra, right? I really drive to work every day to serve the people who serve the people, and I can wrap my head around being a super awesome boss for 50 people way more than I can wrap my head around solving 800 kids' problems, issues, or celebrations, right? Right. And so I think when we can change the mathematics of it and make it even simpler than that. Can I be in really great concert with a teacher leadership team? Can I create a really democratic system? I think a lot of principals will say, I have an open door policy. And that's great, but that means you could sit in your office all day with an open door. It doesn't say anyone's going to walk into it. So how do we build more reliability into it than just like being good? I think most people are good, want to be liked, want to be good leaders. All Vital is trying to do is create some protocols, some systems around that so that it's super reliable. It can outlive a leader, by the way, if you build really good systems, right? I mean, if you have really reliable ways of gathering teacher voice, using teacher voice, gathering principal voice into district decision making, and those systems exist sort of without emotion and without personality. There's sort of the machinery of good culture. That also offers that longevity and sustainability, which is really mission critical.
Yeah. Oh man, such good stuff, man. We could just keep going and going and going. Unfortunately, we've reached that point in the show where I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody here on the show. It's typically my last question, and you've already told us so much about how you are leaning into leadership, but maybe, Nate, is there one more thing you might share as far as what you're doing to lean into leadership right now?
I guess I'll take sort of two ideas and see if I can make a casserole of them and make it into one. But did I just give away my total Minnesota-ness by calling it a casserole or a hot dish? But
you'd already hinted at and mentioned the Twin Cities, so you're
all right. I can use a Runza reference if you want me to.
Oh, there you go. So, even more.
I think a couple of things. One is there are some phrases we use when it comes to leadership that actually I think are sort of grounded in what we were talking about earlier around like burnout is like an individual problem. I think there's some elements that are very similar in the ways that we talk about leaders, and we say that leaders in charge of school culture, a leader, we're going to do leadership development. I'm going to read books about leadership development. I'm going to go to seminars about leadership development. So it's really taking on this sort of pervasive sense that this one person is going to walk into a building, transform it, sustain it, maintain it, whatever that might be. And I think sometimes what's lost in that is the development of the leader, like the human, the person, and being really mindful that it's not, leadership isn't just about practices, right? Or like how to do this or kind of technocratic work, but what are you doing that feeds you, that sustains you? Where is it that you take what you are super great at and do more of that? Take the things where you need to, develop and think really strategically around that. So I think in leadership development, we sometimes feel it's almost like a franchise model. Like here's the 6 secret tips of leadership. Well, doubtful, right? You and I are different people. Those strategies are not ubiquitous. And I think the other piece to leaning into leadership is that, this idea of servant leadership is pervasive, and it should be. It is important, like listening and like generosity, like being a good caretaker and steward of people and places. That's important. But I think servant leadership also, if you I get a little nervous when someone says, I really approach this as a servant leader, because what I'm also listening for are there some governors on that service, right? How many people do you work with, Darrin, who say to their staffs, work-life balance is really important. I want you all home. I want you off email. I want you to go home with your kids, but their car's there till 9 o'clock and they're sending out 10:30 emails. And so in addition to striking a disingenuous balance with their own people, I worry about them. Like servanthood maxes out. And if you are super great at your job, which most leaders are, I want you to do it for a long time. And unchecked servanthood is a little bit of a recipe for either a shorter tenure in your role or an unhappy life. Either one is not particularly savory. And so I think, if we can sort of try to tie a tidy bow around this conversation today, is that when we can, you said zoom out, we can zoom out of thinking of all of this as an individual thing that's on the teacher to do this and on the leader to do this, and rather think about it as that kind of community response, environmental response. There's tremendous hope for our schools. And I want you to know that this sounds cool and everything. It actually works. I do have to say that. I'm not applauding Vital. I'm actually applauding the people who do the work. When they ask better questions, when they create, these systems of listening and caring, people's lives get better. Talked to a rural superintendent last week. He's got no one leaving for the first time in like 10 years. Wow. He's got everyone coming back. He can go into summer and he can literally assign classrooms, he can like just do the work because he knows everyone's coming back. And that to me is like joyful. And if he can do it, so can that person, and so can that person, so can that person, so can that person. And there we go. We're starting to crack the code.
Yeah, no, that's outstanding stuff, man. And good for that individual for being fully staffed, not losing anyone. I think that's pretty amazing. I have one in particular in my head, one of my Nevada clients, same deal, not turning over one at all, which is really hard to believe, right? Because obviously we probably both know handfuls who are turning over 30 and 40%. So definitely important work. Definitely a fantastic conversation, Nate. I really appreciate you joining me here on the podcast. If people want to learn more about the Vital Network, they want to get in touch with you, what are some of the best ways for them to communicate with you?
Yeah, I'd head over to vitalnetwork.com, and there you can get a pretty good sense of what we're up to, and then literally reaching out to me. I don't know if you can tell, Darrin, I really love this work. I'm really passionate about it. I love meeting with other people who are passionate about it, and I also love meeting people who are scared by the work. And I get it. And let's see if we can start. And so Nate at vitalnetwork.com, reach out. Love to have a conversation, and let's shake up the world a little bit here.
Yeah. No, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you. I'm obviously, we've known each other for a number of years, but this work, I was just looking back at my notes from our first conversation about doing this podcast, and I wrote on my notes, and I want to share this with you. This is inspiring work. I want to see leaders stay put. I want to see educators stay put. I want to see schools like the one you're talking about where, hey, we don't have anybody leaving this year. I want to hear that more and more and more, because this is a very important profession. Not to wax poetic here, but I mean, this is the profession that impacts all professions. And so the work you're doing, the work that Vital Network is doing, I applaud you. I appreciate you. And again, I appreciate you being here as a guest on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I wish it was a 12-part series. We can go. Yeah. So and thanks for the work that you do. Yeah. It's all additive and it's all important. I'm super happy to be part of this community. So.
All right, everybody. Fantastic conversation there with Nate Eklund. Definitely some moments in there that will make you rethink the way we look at the workplace environment. Make sure you get down there in the show notes, get connected with Nate and the work that they are doing at the Vital Network. It is absolutely fantastic work. And now it's time for a pep talk. This week on the Pep Talk, I want to talk about two different leadership positions. I want to talk about task-based leadership, and I want to talk about outcomes-based leadership. I had a couple wonderful conversations about a week ago with some school leaders, and we were talking about those specific stances and about how sometimes as leaders we get so dialed in on just simply checking the box. So dialed in that we forget about what the grand scheme is. How many times have you been most of the way through a school year and thought, oh man, I had this great plan in August and it just blew up in my face? Well, the reason for that is you fall into this task-based leadership. It's very seductive, by the way. It gives us this sense of control. It gives us this feeling of production, right? But it's just reactive. And it's driven by this sense of urgency rather than a sense of importance. When we focus on outcomes-based leadership, that's when we dig into our clarity, that's when those things become what we're about, what matters most, and what's really going to make a difference in our school. It's that proactive leadership, the intentional leadership, and it's aligned with your purpose. Now, how do you do that? Let me give you a couple of tips, some things to think about. Number one, some shifts that you can make to move from task manager to outcomes leader. Number one, clarify your vision and get your core priorities in line. Make sure you are extremely clear. I know, big shock, clarity coming from me, but get clear. Number two, set some measurable and outcome-oriented goals. If you focus on those goals, it will keep you with your eye on the horizon. Number three, build some systems that are going to help you support the work. That's where I come in. You know, I didn't just block time for classroom visits. I scheduled them like I would a meeting with the superintendent because they're that important. And I had somebody in my corner, my secretary, helping me make sure that that got done. Number four, focus on the leading indicators, right? Go back and take a look at the data. Check in periodically. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on that dashboard and that you know what's going on. And then number five, make sure you're reflecting weekly and then realign and readjust as you need to go. The thing about a plan is you don't just build a plan and then a year from now say, okay, I'll make changes. No, you make adjustments as you go. And that only happens if you reflect on a weekly basis. Look, you were hired to lead outcomes, not to manage tasks. Don't forget that. I know this was a bit of a lengthy pep talk today, but I really feel passionate about it, and I think it's extremely important that as leaders, we think about those two positions. Do we want to be just a task manager, or do we want to be focused on outcomes? That's what I've got for you this week, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in here to episode 211 of the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Get out there, have a Road to Awesome week.